Hi everybody, it's Mel here and welcome back once again to my channel, Pebbles and Peach. Today I have finally got together for you guys a van build video, and it's basically how we got this van from a non-running builder's van and turned it into this little home for ourselves to go travelling around Europe. So this is something that I probably should have done a long time ago, and I did while we were doing the build. I did film a lot of content, do a lot of pictures, and I kind of kept putting off and off and off doing a van build video just because you guys will know if you've gone into any van forum, any van build forum, like anything you mention, people are like so opinionated about it and feel so strongly and like get quite aggressive about it and need you even utter the dreaded words vapor barrier in a van Facebook page or forum. You just know you're asking for trouble if you've already done it, and you just get all these different opinions and people slamming you for your opinion. And yeah, and I do read like pretty much all of my comments, and I reply to the kind friendly ones and that sort of thing. So I do read them and I just know what's going to happen after this video, but I am prepared for it. If you do have a really strong opinion of something that we've done in the van, you can of course leave it below. I do not mind, but I also do not really care. Like, we built this van from scratch ourselves. It has done what it's needed to do. We have lived in it and travelled in Europe, and it has done us very well and is continuing to do us well. So feel free, of course, to leave your opinion or your comments or your views in the comments section. You're very welcome to do that. But I'm just here today to let you guys know how we did this, how we did it on such a tight budget, and how we managed to go through 14 different countries and travel around in a builder's van effectively. So I have plenty of build progress shots, photos, videos, clips, all that kind of thing. So I'm gonna kind of talk you through it, but I have all that stuff to show you as I'm letting you guys know, so you'll get to see the progress and how it got to this stage. But before we dive into the video, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and to hit the little notification bell beside that too, and that will notify you of any future uploads so you don't miss out on any uploads coming to the channel. There's another couple of big uploads coming here, so you definitely don't want to miss out on those. So we actually bought this van, gosh, it would have been June 2018, and we bought it as a non-runner, so that's not advisable. I wouldn't generally do that, but Aaron knows an awful lot about cars and vans, and we have a lot of friends who kind of work as mechanics and kind of would be able to help us out, and we knew that the problem was just that the fuel pump needed coated. The guy had recently changed it, but we ended up changing the fuel pump anyway and getting it all fixed up, so that was fine. I think I have mentioned before, but I'm going to say in this video, we did our entire van build, including the cost of the van, for under £2,500, and so that includes pretty much everything: the wood, the decorating, the insulation. We did it at a very, very low budget. So on to the build. First thing that we need to do when we got this van, obviously it's past life, it was a builder's van, so it was full of cement and mud and screws and nails and gross things everywhere. So we basically got the van, stuck it in the driveway, and we started tearing it apart. We took the wall panels down, the floor out, and underneath the floor was what I could only describe as a top layer of soil. Like, it was literally like I could scrape it with a spade, and we had to kind of scrape it all up to remove it and then brush it, and then it was so disgusting that we ended up getting a power hose and holding it like up the back of the van and spraying everything out. So we kind of got this really good clean, and then we went around with loads of different cleaners, hoovers, basically just cleaned it as much as we possibly could, gotten all the crevices of the wall panels, and I know they get covered up, but to me it's kind of gross to leave that stuff festering underneath, so we cleaned basically everything up as much as we could. That's when we discovered that there were a couple of holes in the wheel arch on the back right hand side, but like I said, luckily we have friends in the right places and we could get access to a welder, and one of our friends is a welder and came and patched that all up for us. So once we got the clean up, the tidy, we were at a clean slate done. That kind of took about a day, and then add another day for the welding. That's whenever we started our insulation. Now there's a lot of mixed views on this. I'm just going to tell you what we did. For our floor and our ceiling, we used insulation board. So we battened out the floor, because obviously you're going to need to lay your floor board on top of that. So we battened out the floor. I say we, Aaron did a lot of that. Battened out the floor, and then we got like basically board insulation, and we got it in every little gap that we could, kind of smushed it in bits, pieces, and then if there was any little cracks left, there wasn't a whole lot, I basically went over the entire thing with duct tape. Like, goodness knows how much duct tape, like I don't even want to know how many rolls of duct tape have gone into this van, but there was a lot of duct tape used. So basically any little cracks, any little crevices, they were covered with duct tape. And then once we had all that done, we just basically used the panels that were, the wood was okay that we took off the walls. So we actually just used it and pieced it out into sections, and then the gaps we kind of filled as well, so that there was no cracks or leaks could happen, even though we do have vinyl then again on top of that. But we didn't put the vinyl down yet, we just had the wood floor down because we didn't want to ruin it while we were doing the rest of the work. And then we did the ceiling pretty much the same way, except for we left it to obviously do the cladding. So we just put the insulation up, the tape up, and then left it at that and moved on to the walls. For the walls we used earth wool. Again, I didn't get involved too much in that process. I think Aaron and his dad did a lot of that, and I basically just used spray adhesive, got it into the walls and into all the little cracks, all the little crevices, any little gaps that you can find. That's basically how we did the walls. Then came the dreaded vapor barrier. I know there's going to be mixed opinions on this, but we used a vapor barrier, and we basically used sheeting to trap every place around our insulations. So the only place we didn't use it was the floor, but we used it along the walls, along the ceiling, and basically any gaps were spray adhesived, any little nooks, crannies were covered up with tape. There's a lot of duct tape used, like good duct tape, like proper sealing stuff, to basically seal any areas where there could be gaps. Sealed it right to the sides of the van so it was stuck on tight, and that was basically just done with the sheet, the spray adhesive and tape, just to make sure that any gaps were closed. We had already had our plan for the van long before we'd even started the work on it, so we knew where we wanted our electrics to be. We knew that we wanted 6 lights along the roof. These are like dual controlled. If I just show you, I can flick this side off and the back lights are still lit. So we have 2 lights down here, 4 lights at the back, and that just meant like if someone was in bed and someone was up, it means that that area can be lit and this one can be switched off. So we have these 2 lights set to a switch right beside the bed, and then the back 2 lights are just here behind this little bit of the kitchen countertop, so you can flick them on and off there, so it's totally separate. So we had to run the wiring obviously to correspond with that. I should say for our electrics, basically all we have is a 100-watt solar panel, 110 amp hour lead acid battery. We have a solar charge controller obviously in here, I'll show you guys that, and we also have a split charge relay which goes from our van battery to our leisure battery, and what that does is when our van battery is full, any excess charge that would have charged the van battery goes into our leisure battery. So we have basically 2 ways of charging our battery, one through the solar, one through basically just driving. So it meant if there was any one that failed, there was always a backup option there, so I definitely recommend that. So we pretty much did all of the electrics next after we'd done the insulation, the vapor barrier, put the floorboard down. We basically ran the wires so that we could have our 2 lights here, 2 lights here, 2 lights here, and then we had another one that comes up the back, around the ceiling, and then round down behind the wardrobe, and it's how we have this little 12-volt port here right beside our wardrobes and right beside the bed, and the switch here as well. And then the second one, like I said, is here. We have another 12-volt plug down here and a little switch. The other electronic thing that we did have that I forgot to mention is we bought an inverter, and that means that you can basically, we obviously run off 3-pin here in the UK, meant that we could like plug in our laptop chargers and things that we couldn't do 12 volt, and we did all the math of like how long we can run certain things for, all that kind of stuff. The only other things that are electrical in the van is we have a CO2 monitor over in this little like safety area, because that's kind of nearish where the gas is, and then we have a fire alarm on the ceiling just above the head of our bed, because we didn't want it too close to this kitchen area, because even when we were cooking some nights, like we made burgers one night, it still managed to make the smoke alarm go off, so we knew it didn't need to be too close to the kitchen, so we've got it here, so if anything were to happen in the night while we were asleep or in an emergency, it very much works, and we found that out pretty much straight away. But we obviously didn't put the fire alarm and the CO2 monitor up just yet. It's just I kind of wanted to let you guys know that that is pretty much the electrics in our van. We don't really have anything else. In the front we do have an extra little charger that we screwed in to give us just some more ports for charging, but that's pretty much it as is, and we don't have any external way of like plugging in at campsites or anything like that. We totally relied off of the solar and off of driving around to charge our battery fully, and it worked absolutely fine. We had no problems with that. So once that was all done, we kind of moved on. We'd done a little bit of the cladding along the back of the walls before we'd started that. We pretty much stopped and then just did all the electrics before we then moved back on to cladding. A lot of our van is actually cladding. These wardrobes are, a lot of it is made with cladding, the sides are made with cladding, under the bed is made with cladding, but we found really affordable cladding from Homebase and we pretty much just used that the whole way in the van. So we cladded both of the walls first, and then after we cladded the ceiling. And then before we moved on any further, I painted the walls so that it was all done and out of the way. I knew we wanted that light blue colour on them because I'd kind of already got the colour scheme in my head of what we're going to do. So we put that light duck egg paint all down the walls, and then I believe we put the trimming on the walls and the ceiling so that it was all done, just to tidy up any little rough edges. So after we had finished cladding the walls and the ceiling, that's when we moved on to kind of framing things out. And one thing that we framed first was the bed. We knew it was important to get the size right for the bed. It's not something that you want to like end with in case you've kind of mismeasured anything. So we knew exactly how much space we needed for a standard double bed. So we basically cut that in half and built like our side bed frame here, and then we knew how much space it would need to sit across. I have showed you before, I think, how this bed works, to sit across on this little piece that sticks out of the wardrobe. And rather than having two big legs sticking down, and a lot of people who have the slide out beds, they have like big legs sticking down either side, but we decided against that and have it resting here at the bottom of our wardrobes. So we kind of started with the bed and then built this wardrobe in to fit it so that when the bed was across it would fit really neatly on these wardrobes. So we used all different types of wood basically for like framing things out. I could be wrong, but I think for the bed we used like 3 by 1.5 inch. For like framing the wardrobe, I think we used like 1 by 1.5 inch, and the kitchen slightly different. So we just used whatever kind of fit our purpose. And then once that was done, basically the only other wood is these boards were put in, which we painted, that create the doors for the wardrobes, for the cupboards, for the kitchen cupboards. And then like basically all the sides are cladding in the wardrobe anyway. The kitchen, I think we just used like more board down the sides of it. So basically the order of process was the bed frame, the wardrobe, and then the kitchen kind of fit along that, and then we kind of just made the cupboard spaces as we thought we needed it. So we had our camping toilet, so we knew that that needed to fit in down here, so we kind of worked out what space we need for that and then kind of worked around that. We also have another cupboard under the bed because this garage area is so long you can access it from the back. But if you were to reach stuff like way up at this end, you'd have to basically climb the whole way in. I think there's a funny picture of me laying the lino in the floor underneath here where I'm like literally stuck inside. So we put a little cupboard right underneath this bit which allows us access into the garage, and that's where we'd put things like spare water bottles, like our wash basin that we didn't have to use every day. Like obviously we have a sink, but we also have a separate wash basin for like clothing and stuff if we ever needed it. Toilet chemicals, like things that you need but you don't need all the time, but it's just handy to have access to from inside the van, we would put down there. Sometimes if we had way too much shopping for our cupboards, and our cupboards are quite big so we never really had that issue, we'd kind of just shove stuff down in there. But it was mainly like toilet rolls, toilet chemicals, water bottles, things like that. And so one of my favourite features of our van, and we knew we were doing from pretty early, was I wanted a space where I'd be able to get ready, a space that we could have the tablet and a mirror and a space for our books. And it really kind of ties this place together and makes it really homey, I think. Anyway, we initially started off just putting, I think I've said to you guys before, we put this little bungee across to keep the books in, but we realised pretty quickly as we drove that it didn't do the best job at keeping everything in, so we added these little strips of wood just down the side here, and it just stops anything from really coming out there. So we added these little strips of wood in more towards the end, which is why they're not actually varnished like all of the other wood. So obviously when we did our kitchen, we made sure that we put a space for our countertop. We put those tiles all along the back and a bit of trim along that. We just tiled that like you would usually tile something. The countertop, obviously you don't want to put things like linseed oil or anything like that. It's not safe to use on a worktop, but these are just board worktops. And then we found this like Ron-Seal antibacterial worktop surface oil, and we basically used that a good few times over the space of a couple of days to make sure our worktops were good. They're actually pretty well waterproof now because of that stuff. And then any gaps behind where the tiles are or down the sides where we had to cut, like there's a little cut there, and we just siliconed it with grey silicone so that everything was watertight should there be any leaks, which we did have from this freaking water tank. So that was all protected and safe from leaks. Once we obviously put the countertops in, we built this kind of around our water tank. We have two 25-litre water tanks, one up there, one in the back that can be accessed from the back of the van. Yeah, this did have a tap on it. You can see now it's got like a little cap on it, and that's because our tap did start leaking. So it's not ideal at the minute. We have it used like that, and we can still use it, but it's just not as easy as it was when we had a tap on it. So that's something that we do need to replace, and we will replace soon. All the little spaces where you can still see van, I kind of wanted that covered, and I wanted it more to tie in with the rest of the van. So I ordered like ripstop material, which is basically like tent material, if you think of like the material that you'd use on a tent or a kite even. I basically used spray adhesive and sprayed that like anywhere that you could see like original van, so that it was all covered up and sealed and also waterproof as well. And then once we'd gone to that stage, everything was kind of built. That's when we painted. We taped everything off, painted the wardrobes, painted the front of the cupboards and the kitchen. I stuck these little tiles up. These are just like little stickers that I got off of Amazon, and they just help create a little protective surface on the wall behind the sink, and it does what it needs to do. It hasn't peeled off. Like, you don't really get much splashing around that area, just the countertops will get a little bit wet, and then they're easily wiped down with a bit of kitchen roll or tile or whatever. And then that's when we started doing more decorative things. I had already made those curtains that you see behind. I kind of knew what length I needed and pre-made those, and I just put them up. They're literally on like curtain wire that runs from one side to the other, and then they're in the middle. There's another little hook goes up in the middle, and yeah, that's basically all they run on. That's the first time I ever made curtains, and I'm so proud of these curtains, and I really like how they make the van look. But basically I'd ordered the cactus material, I really liked it, and then I also ordered like thermal material that, you know, you can't see the sun through or anything like that, and I put it down behind so it's like double layered. So whenever you want like darkness in here and you don't want any light through to come in the front, like those curtains literally block out like all light. No one can see through them at all. And then it was things like making the bug nets. I've told you guys how I did that before. I ordered the like magic mesh bug nets off of Amazon. I basically stitched them together and then took them up a bit. I do a lot of like stitching and embroidery work and sewing. I have a sewing machine and an overlocker, so I already had all that stuff. If you want to check out any of my like work in that regard, you'll be able to see it on Instagram or my Facebook page. But I already do a lot of like sewing and making and decorative stuff, so that was kind of more my forte, and when I really started to come into play. I mean, don't get me wrong, I helped with like everything else, but this was like my bit where I was like, okay, I actually know what I'm doing now, kind of. I actually kind of handmade this mattress. So we just bought, I think it was like £100 for this mattress that we bought just in IKEA, and we literally went up and it was the size of a standard double bed. So what we did was cut it down the middle. I literally used like a handsaw and I measured it all out, cut it down the middle, and it's folded up on top of itself. So mattress cover obviously didn't quite fit right again on it, so I basically took half of it off. One side is fully stitched in the mattress cover, and then the other side is kind of like half this material that I kind of just had lying around that I added extra to it. And we made the little box seat, Aaron made the shell, and I basically bought cushion, folded it up, sewed it on top, and then added material to the top of that and used staples to staple that in, so it's like a comfortable little seat. It's what I sit on pretty much every time I make these videos in the van. And yeah, and then we just added little decorative things that were also useful. We added this spice rack. This other one we didn't get until I think we were in the UK a couple of weeks already, and we bought a second one of those because it's really useful. At the minute I've got tea in it, but we used to have all our spices in it whenever we were more full-time in the van. We have those little drawers that I obviously picked up in Matalan, and they fit into that little space nicely, and they don't open unless you pull them, so they've never opened while we've been driving or anything like that. They are pretty sturdy and secure for like £10, I think I got that whole little set for. And yeah, that is pretty much how we built our van. I don't really think I've forgotten anything or left anything out. If there's anything you want to know more about or more of, like, I mean, the rest of it was just kind of decorating and getting nice covers for the bed and getting nice cushions that went with things, and obviously we made our little safety area that has the CO2 alarm. One thing I forgot to mention is obviously we cook on gas, and we have this camping stove which was actually originally belonged to my parents. This is from the 90s, and the thing was hardly ever used. We used to go camping a lot whenever I was a kid, and my parents were like, look, we don't really use this anymore, you may as well have it and make use for it. So we are talking about perhaps doing another van build, and that would definitely be coming out and coming with us, because the thing is an actual base. Like, stuff a few years back actually was made to last, and the grill on that thing is amazing. Whenever we were over in England, I basically lived off of grilled crumpets and butter. It was absolutely amazing. But yeah, we have that in, and obviously the hole goes through to the gas, which is just underneath it. So we keep it off and then just switch it on as we need it. But everything is so easily accessed and easy to get to in our van. Like I said, we lived in this thing. We went through 14 different countries and we had a great time in it. We had essentially virtually no problems with the build at all. It has been a really comfortable living space. It has a really nice atmosphere and a really nice homey feel about it. Obviously, you guys know I have other security measures that I mentioned in the van tour, like the little rape alarms, like extra locks inside, fire alarm, CO2 alarm, so we're kitted out with all that stuff too. And yeah, like I don't think our van looks like it was done on such a budget. Like, I mean, yes, it's very handmade, but I think that makes it homey and it makes it more us, and I love how it's decorated. I know it's a little on the girly side. So if you have any questions or comments or queries or anything, of course, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you guys. And hopefully you enjoyed this video, it made sense, and maybe you got something useful out of it for your own build. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and to hit the little notification bell too so you don't miss out on any future uploads. And I will see you guys on the next upload. Bye guys.
I'll raise a glass to you, and you'll raise a glass to me, and when they're half full, we'll top them up with